What's up, YouTube? It's your boy Aaron. Welcome back for another cooking video. And today I'm going to cook up some steak. I wanted to talk a little bit about steak. It certainly is not a cheap item at the grocery anymore. This is a chuck steak. This is probably one of the cheapest cuts you can get that you would want to eat as a steak. Probably a little bit on the tough side, but what I really like about chuck is that it's got a lot of fat, and fat means flavor, at least for steak. So I've got myself a nice cut here. I've always been a little bit more of a steak snob. Personally, I've always preferred other cuts, your ribeyes, your porterhouses, but easily those cuts will cost at least twice as much at the grocery nowadays. Things in Hawaii, where I live, already are expensive enough. So I got this steak for a good price. And honestly, if you don't know how to cook a steak well, then you're better off buying something like this versus a really expensive cut. So I'm probably going to cut this in half. I'm going to cook half of it for tonight, for my dinner tonight. And I'm going to show you guys how I do my steak. There certainly are a few details to make sure that the steak comes out the way that you want it. And that is, you want a nice crust on the outside. You don't want a gray steak. You're basically just boiling it. Let's go ahead and prepare our steak. First thing, tempering. Tempering is bringing the steak up to room temperature when you cook it. It allows for a more even cook. If you put a cold steak into a hot pan, the inside of the steak is going to cook at a much slower rate. For a thicker cut, you certainly want to temper your steak. Otherwise, it's just going to end up raw in the middle. But this one's pretty thin, so certainly on the thin side, so you probably will not need to temper this. So okay, let's go ahead and get this out. I'm going to cut it in half and then prepare the right half of this piece here. So step one to having a really good steak is you need to get all the moisture off the surface of the steak. This ensures that you get a really nice sear on the steak. So make sure that your steak is very dry on the outside when you do put it in the pan. Side dishes for tonight, I'm gonna make myself some stovetop stuffing. I'll probably do some corn as well. Coming back to the steak, you can see I've replaced the paper towel. This one's soaked. Once my pan comes up to heat, I'll be ready to go ahead and throw this onto the fire. All right, got the oil up to temperature. I'm gonna put the steak that I've got here salt side down, and then come back and throw a little bit more salt on the top. So it's good that I've got the little paper towel. Should make this a little easier to do. In goes the steak. I'm going ahead and seasoning the top of the steak with a little bit more salt here. Now decisions on when to flip this steak. I'm going to let this cook for about 8.5 minutes in total. That's just kind of how I do it by memory. If your steak is too well done one time, cook it for about a minute less. If your steak turns out to be a little too rare, cook it for a little longer the next time you do a steak. So 8.5 minutes. I'm going to turn this over after about 4 minutes here. But we're just going to leave it sitting on one side because we want that steak to have a really nice crust on the bottom side before we turn it over. The other thing is that when you turn your steak over, you want to move it to the hottest part of the pan. So what I'll do is I'll probably push the steak off to the left side of the pan so that the right part of the pan comes up to temperature. So when we flip it over to the right-hand side, it's going to contact the hottest part of the pan, and they give you a really nice sear on the other side. So we'll be back in about a couple minutes. I'm going to let the steak cook on one side here. Steak probably just about ready to turn over. Go ahead and peek real quick. Yeah, it looks really good. We'll turn this over. I'm going to flip it over to the other side of the pan here. Oh yeah, look at that. That's just about perfect. Nice crust on that one side. Won't have to cook this on the sides of the steak because this is a pretty thin cut. So probably about 2 minutes on this side and then this steak is going to be done. All right, this steak is just about done. I'm going to add about a tablespoon of butter. And then what I do is I tilt the pan and I'm just cooking the bottom of that butter. This is where you would baste it, but I don't have a free hand. This is going to be close enough. It's going to give the steak a good amount of flavor here. So now that my steak is done, I'm going to let it rest. It's still cooking on the inside. Let it rest. Let the steak come down to about room temperature before you cut it. Otherwise, all the juice is just going to come all out right out of the steak. You've got to let this rest. In the meantime, we can finish up our side dishes. One thing that I did want to add is that you would not put something like A1 or ketchup on a $20 cut of steak, but you certainly can on a $3 or $4 cut of steak to improve the flavor. So maybe we'll do a little bit of a ketchup Worcestershire sauce, almost like a Japanese style tonkatsu sauce. It goes really well with this steak. This is what I kind of grew up eating. So let the steak rest, and we'll be back when we're ready to cut this thing open. For our sides tonight, I've got some frozen cut corn. There's a little bit of butter on the bottom there, but I'm also going to throw in some Cajun seasoning. Have some Cajun style corn. Really love this stuff. Lots of flavor. And it's also got a good amount of salt. So I won't need to add salt to this. This Cajun seasoning is going to be enough. Also got a pot of stuffing off the side. This is from the box. This is some stovetop. Cook this up already. Just letting it steam with the cover on top. And voila, we are done and ready to eat. So this is my steak dinner, done with a fairly cheap cut of steak. I think it came out pretty good, but let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Like, comment, subscribe. Hope you enjoyed this video, and bon appetit.